Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're here with one of our valued partners, RICS Software, to discuss next level retail merchandise intelligence. Management One is fortunate enough to work with several unique partners in the retail community, and we're really glad that the folks at RICS were able to help produce this event today for their valued users. So today we want to discuss how the users of RICS software can really benefit from the power of not only the data they receive from RICS, but from our Management One retail analysts as well.
Before we get into that, I did want to do a little bit of house rules for this call. Using the GoToWebinar platform, we do want to make sure that you have the best audio available to you. So you can listen in via computer or your phone if you use the GoToWebinar panel. Also on the panel, questions. We are going to have a live Q&A at the end of this, and we want to make this an open panel discussion. So please submit any questions that you have throughout the presentation using the questions panel. And the most important question that we always receive is, will you be getting a recording of this? Absolutely yes. So if you do need to step away or if you weren't able to join on time, we are sending a recording out after this so you can watch with your team or share with any colleagues that you think would benefit from this. So who exactly is Management One if you're not familiar with our company? For over 35 years, Management One has provided financial security for our people, our clients, and our affiliates. And we focus mainly on merchandise intelligence and education for independent retailers like you. We operate with the core values of a generous heart, courage, curiosity, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration. And we have made a specific commitment to increase racial and ethnic diversity in our company and our network to improve racial and social justice in America. And it's something that we will continue to do in the months and years to come. So now I'll turn it over to Tom from RICS Software. Thank you, Tom.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I assume you can hear me okay?
Fantastic.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining as well. To Nico's point, M1 has been a trusted partner of RICS for the past several years, many years, and our leadership team, we place great value in their ability to help retailers just like yourselves really use the robust data and the reporting that RICS provides to better plan and manage your business. So with that said, what I would like to do is turn this over to Paul Erickson and Ritchie Sayner. They're going to walk you through their amazing platform and how you can better utilize RICS. What I would also like to point out today is I'd like to introduce Jimmy Richburg, who is our Director of Client Success at RICS. Actually, Nico, if you don't mind, can you make him a panelist as well in case a question comes up? So I realize everyone on the presentation today is very familiar with RICS, but if you've got a specific question around a report that maybe you don't think you're utilizing effectively, or you've got some questions around some data being produced by a report, feel free to ask that. And we've got Jimmy as a fantastic resource today. So with that said, I will turn it over to the M1 team and thank you all for your partnership and thank you all for joining today.
And Jimmy, you are now a panelist.
All right, you ready to go, Nico?
We are good to go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Paul Erickson. I'm Director of Sales of Management One. I want to just, thank everybody at RICS, by the way, for putting this all together. We're very, very excited to be giving this presentation today in November. I'd like to start out with a quote that I think is very apt for what we are going through, what we have gone through, and it's by the former CEO of Intel, Andy Grove, which says, "Bad companies are destroyed by crises, good companies survive them, and great companies are improved by them." And that is something that we are seeing at Management One. Despite all of the challenges that all independent retailers have faced for the last 6-7 months, we have a surprising number of clients that are doing not only surviving, but are thriving in this difficult environment. And it's all about, we believe, in right-sizing your inventory. Right-sizing your inventory really begins with how efficient you are in forecasting and planning your future inventory positions. One of the most significant aspects of a successful retail business is knowing not just how much inventory you have now, but how much you want to have in the future. I think that's particularly important because today is November 10th. We've got the end of the year staring at us. Do we know where we wanted to be at the end of 2020 in terms of inventory? Because knowing your position at the end of a season or at the end of the year has everything to do with not only cash flow, obviously, but profitability, markdowns, and whether you're going to be paying Uncle Sam a profit on unsold inventory instead of cash. Now, there are various planning elements that a lot of retailers do of all shapes and sizes, and one of the most common is top-down planning, which traditionally involves defining sales and inventory goals at a very high level. Now, when you talk about top-down planning, there's a certain inflexibility to this approach, and most importantly, it lacks something: the participation of your customer. So whether you're anticipating sales to increase or be flat or to decrease in 2021, top-down planning can cost you growth. Now, in the movie Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum is quoted, "Life finds a way." Well, in retail, hot items find a way, no matter what the business climate we find ourselves in, because just a few SKUs can be significant to your sales. Broad and thin inventory assortments in the past is not only not playing it safe, but it is absolutely deadly and will leave you with stock shortages, even the best items. Right-sizing your vendor structure. Right-sizing your inventory should also include really taking a hard look at the vendors you're carrying. Right, Nico? There we go. Most retailers pre-COVID-19 were already carrying a bloated vendor matrix, which created bloated inventories. In fact, if you were to ask retail experts around the country, what is the number one cause of bloated inventories? It's buying from too many vendors. And so during COVID-19, a lot of retailers have found a need to cull that vendor matrix down. And one of the most important things you all can do that are on this call is start creating a vendor scorecard. Because right now is the time to really look at who are your best performers and who are not. And do we really need them? And why are we continuing to buy them? Those vendors you invest in and do not perform at retail. And one other thing too, and we've heard this from a lot of our clients around North America, contact vendors that in the past had refused to sell you for whatever reason, competitive pressures, what have you. Check again. They might have changed their mind. And rethink your product mix. Do you have products to help your customers adapt to the changing home office environment? Because a lot of them are still going to be working from home after this pandemic is done for an extended period of time, if not permanently. And I would end this particular slide with this, and it's a good exercise for everybody in the call to do, to better focus on right-sizing your inventory. I want you to picture starting your store over again from scratch. In other words, picture your store with empty racks and no inventory in it at all. And knowing what you know today and what works and what doesn't work and what you have been through and what you may still have to go through, what would you do differently? And then map out exactly how the store should look if you were to restart it instead of how it does look today. How are you tracking inventory fluctuations? Now, the idea here is to understand a very important principle of inventory. You can't be everything to everybody. It exists, and to use it to help focus your inventory to produce more sales than previously thought. Now, you all have classifications in your store that you set up within your RICS system, and some of them are overstocked and some of them might be understocked, but here's something that is very, very important to understand. Most of the classifications you have in your store are both overstocked and understocked at the exact same time. The overstock is usually not only what may not be part of your strategic future going forward, but in addition, it could be dated inventory consisting of broken sizes, discontinued styles, poor color choices, even vendors that you haven't even bought for a year. In other words, a percentage of the classification consists of a whole lot of nothing. Yet in that same classification, it can be understocked. in subcategories. Vendors, items that are selling well but can be almost invisible due to, in many cases, a top-down analysis. And because of this, classifications in your business in general will never reach its full potential. Now, one of my favorite examples on retailers that are doing well is Zara. Now, Zara, I think you could make a case that it is the most successful boutique in the history of planet Earth. Depending on the American stock market and where it exists at any point in time, the owner of Zara, who lives in Madrid, Spain, is either the third or fourth richest man on planet Earth or the eighth or ninth richest man on planet Earth. They have over 6,000 doors around the globe, and they are the most profitable and successful boutique of all time. Why? Have you been in a Zara store? I have. I live in Minneapolis. There's one at Mall of America here. I walk in, beautiful merchandise, very good sales crew, displays wonderful, but none of that's the reason why they've been so successful. As I could name you 5 other retailers in each one of those categories that are better than Zara at each one of those qualities. What is their secret? Their secret is the idea of scarcity. The idea of scarcity in retail has become very, very important today. It has shown to be one of the critical aspects of surviving and thriving during COVID-19, because your customer visitations are linked directly to the freshness of product in your store or how often you replace your inventory. In Zara, nothing stays in the store for more than 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, if it hasn't sold, I don't know where it goes, probably in the garbage, but they turn their inventory that fast. And the other part of Zara that's very, very interesting is that Zara has created this idea of scarcity because they never recut. They're a vertical operation. They never recut, even if a jacket comes in and sells an 80% sell-through the first week around the planet. Most retailers in the past would recut that jacket. We have to have more of it, not Zara. They said once that jacket is in and gone, and if a customer comes in and says, I like it, I might come back in 2 days and see, and I'll buy it. They're taking a risk that when they come back in 2 days, that jacket is gone, never to be seen again. Scarcity. That is why the average customer, good customer of a boutique in North America sees their customers on an average 4 or 5 times a year. The good customers of Zara go in 17 times a year. Ladies and gentlemen, how you rotate and bring in new goods and move your goods faster has everything to do with revenue and customer visitation. The idea is, go ahead, Nico, for the next slide. The idea of scarcity has been around for a long time, and you see it, and it's powerful. That's why so many people use it. When our options are scarce, what is available becomes more attractive. And you see it on all kinds of different businesses, not just in retail. We only have 1 left in the warehouse. Someone else expressed interest in this house earlier today. Ooh. Call now, available only while supplies last. Only 3 left at this price. You see these ads with the ticking clock. That's scarcity. And it is a powerful motivator to drive customers to buy. Now, the whole idea of having more is better is something that's been debunked for 15 years. It was started out by the book by Barry Schwartz that was out 15 years ago called The Paradox of Choice. And in essence, what Barry Schwartz was saying is that the more choices we give people, the less likely they are to choose. And this has been proven by study after study after study. One of the nice things that we've seen at Management One over the last 9 months is that clients that were working with less inventory but bringing in more new all the time but never having a lot saw sales gains every single month, even during the crisis when they were open. If you give people too many choices, it does make them difficult to choose. Go ahead. Now, there's a reason why people literally will sleep outside of Apple stores waiting to buy a new Apple product that is only minimally different than the ones they already have. Why would they do that? I think it's crazy. They do that because being exposed to something new and novel is actually, it is actually increases how much a chemical called dopamine is released in our brain. When we see something new, we see it as the potential to reward us in some way. Now, marketing and neurology have a lot that they go together, I think, actually. And the whole idea of dopamine, which is released in our brain, dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's released when we eat food we crave, when we see something new, when it's actually released when we have sex, believe it or not. But when we show our customers newness, that is so critical for them to keep coming back and them to buy. Now, there was a guy named Russell Conwell back a long time ago, and he wrote a book called The Acres of Diamonds. And it really was originated as a speech which Conwell delivered, oh my God, thousands of times around the globe. It was so popular. And it was first published in 1890 by the John Huber Company in Philadelphia. Well, anyway, the central idea is this. We don't need to look elsewhere for opportunity, achievement, or fortune. The resources to achieve all good things are present in one's community. Now, this theme was developed by an anecdote that Conwell shares, that since he was told by one of his Arab guides when he was in the Middle East about a man who wanted to find diamonds so badly that he sold his property, went off on a futile search for diamonds, and back at this property, the new owner discovered that a rich diamond mine was actually located right there on his old home. Now, Conwell elaborates on the theme through examples of success, genius, service, other virtues involving ordinary Americans contemporary to his audience at that time, and it was all about dig in your own backyard. A pickaxe is to unearthing diamonds as data is to unearthing opportunities in your business. But what data should we look for? We are surrounded with data today in our lives. But are we looking at the right data, and are we looking at it correctly? Because I believe there's been a data paradigm, and that data paradigm puts a box around how we make decisions and has not been focused on the real practical problem solving. Sometimes it can start out with a classification structure itself. What makes a good DCS, department class substructure, or what makes a bad one for that matter? So I'm going to share with you one of our reports, which we have up on the screen right now. And this is a client of ours that decided that they have a gene category. And maybe Nico, if you can put your cursor so everybody can see where that was. Right where Nico's cursor is right there in jeans. We thought we forecasted jeans to sell 36,710 last month. We actually sold 41,000. We did well. Then Nico, go over to the inventory over to the right, and this store has $128,000 in jeans, and the planned inventory is 124. Okay, a little bit above planned inventory, but a little bit above planned sales. Sounds like a really perfect category. Everything is perfect, right? Let's dig for diamonds. What this retailer wanted to see is now we want to subcategorize and look at the information below jeans because a lot's happening here. And so what they did is they broke their jeans into two categories, two subcategories: core, which I would assume are basic replenishable items, and fashion, one-off, in and out quickly. Now, last month, the sales in core and fashion were almost exactly the same. 12,142 in basic core, 11,592 in fashion. But look at the inventory. The inventory in core was 28,000. That's good. 28,000 to sell 12. That's a good relationship of inventory to sales. But look what happened in fashion. After selling 11,592, they only have $14,000 left. Essentially, they have barely a month's supply. What would you do with that information when you find it? And I will tell you this, that when we get new clients, in almost every single case, this is what we find when we start looking down below the category structure for planning and looking at it at a deeper dive. We find that these are the diamonds. Right away, this store should be increasing the amount of inventory they're carrying in fashion jeans because they're clearly, by definition, missing business. Now let's drill down a step further. Go to the next slide, Nico. What we have here is actually, we're looking at it because this retailer, what I forgot to tell you, has 3 stores, not 1. And so when we look at those core jean business now that we thought was perfect, remember, they had 12,000 in sales, they had $28,000 in inventory. That looked right. But now when we look at store one, which I would assume is their flagship store, $7,500 in sales were accomplished in store one out of the 12,000, the lion's share. And then the inventory, however, is $8,297. Essentially, the store that's producing the lion's share of sales has the least amount of inventory of the three stores. We've got diamonds to be found even in the basics. And of course, in fashion, you know, where we knew we were understocked, we go to store one again, and understocked isn't even a definition. After selling $6,800 and only having $4,900 left, we're completely decimated with inventory. How much business are we missing? There is one thing that computer systems or management one can't define. It is the missing ingredient. How much business are you missing? How much? That doesn't show up, but we can tell that. We can tell through data clues on exactly what we could be doing more if we increased our selection. You can go to the next slide, Nico. Now remember this in your store. And retail's this is a funny business we're in. It really is. It's different than almost any other business. That's always hard to find a good accountant, right? Because not many accountants are actually schooled in retail. They like to keep our inventories at cost, and there's lots of other things that happen. But our profits and our cash are in our inventory. And there is this is a very important thing to understand about retail. One of the most misleading metrics in retailing today comes from your accounting statements, and it's called, I hope everyone's sitting down now, it's your cost of goods sold. Why is that missed? That's an important metric. That's essentially the number that calculates your profitability, your cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is sales and after markdowns and after shrinkage. Why is that a misleading metric in retail? It is a misleading metric in retail because it is what it says it is. It is the cost of the goods you sold. Let me explain. I went and bought 50 widgets. I landed 50 widgets in February. At the end of October, say 7 months later, I sold 5 of the 50 at full price. My cost of goods sold would be excellent. I sold them all at full price. But my cost of goods purchased would be horrible. Instead of looking at cost of goods sold, start looking at cash flow, cost of goods purchased, because there's really the diamonds in your backyard of where you're going to find of where we're overbuying and landing with too much inventory, and more importantly than that, even where we're underbuying. Start looking at purchases against sales instead of simply cost of goods sold. You can go to the next one, Nico. We need to look at inventory differently. There's a common mistake, I think, that happened this is true, by the way, in all verticals. Whether you're a woman's boutique, a men's luxury store, a family shoe store, an outdoor retailer, a gift shop, I don't care. The common mistake is that we hold, generally, too much inventory and do not flow in enough new inventory. Now, that may seem like a contradiction in terms, a little bit like jumbo shrimp. But it is the secret sauce to grow your business profitably, to increase your cash flow, to lower your debt levels with or without a virus. And this is the insurance you're looking for to survive the next crisis down the pike. What am I talking about in terms of less holding, but more buying? I'm talking about getting on a good plan that does that. Smaller quantities that you bring in, get in and out more quickly. And then on top of that, a willingness, which is absolutely crucial to be part of this secret sauce, a willingness to recognize a mistake. Recognizing a mistake fast. You may call it fail fast, But recognizing a mistake is so important, and move on it quickly, and forget about margin. Once you know you've got a problem inventory, a problem style, a problem vendor, forget about margin. It's all about cash flow, getting it out as quickly as you can, because it's not a zero-sum game. Because that merchandise will, in that space it's taking up on your sales floor, will be then taken up by something new and different that hopefully will sell better. And that is how you get faster turn. That is how you increase customer visitation. And that is how you grow business. And that is what we've been proving during the pandemic, before the pandemic, and it will, and in all likelihood, after the pandemic. So what's consultative open to buy? And people always ask, Paul, what does your company do? I don't understand it. And I go, I don't like to say we do open to buy, because you can buy software for open to buy. You can do your own open to buy on a spreadsheet. You've got all kinds of Yahoos out there on Excel spreadsheet offering open to buy. But consultative open to buy is help, because it's help in guiding you through the planning. And I could say inventory, but really it's your cash flow. Because in almost everybody on this call, 50% of your business is buying merchandise or more. So guiding through planning your inventory is planning your cash flow. It's also identifying those risks and those opportunities. A little bit of the sample report I showed you. Where are we too heavy? But more importantly, what are the diamonds in our backyard? What are the opportunities? Where do we find them? And how do we build our business around them? And number 3, we all have financial goals. You know, if you don't know which way you're going, any road is going to take you there. And so what's very, very important is that we decide, what are our financial goals for next year? What do we want to do in sales? What is our purchase budget around inventory? What is our inventory turnover goal? How fast do we want to rotate? We want to increase it by how fast? And what are our margins? And what a plan or an open to buy does is help you create this financial framework around your goals. That's the structure that we're looking for around inventory purchases. And that is something that people, I think most people don't understand. See, an open to buy and a plan has to have a point to it. It has to have a reason for it. And the reason for it and the point to it is, where do we want to be financially 12 months from now? And then let's work every week, every month together to achieve that plan. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of what a gambler's fallacy. I have been to Las Vegas, by the way. I'm sharing you this now with Ritchie Sayner far too many times. And Ritchie Sayner has sometimes, who is my good friend, we've talked about what a gambler's fallacy, and I don't know if anybody's ever talked about this with you before, but this is it's about bias. And what this is, the gambler's fallacy is creating a deceptive bias that leads you to anticipate patterns that don't really exist. Now, this happens in retail, by the way. Now, the gambler's fallacy occurs when an individual erroneously believes that a certain random event is less likely or more likely given the previous events or a series of events. Now, this line of thinking is absolutely incorrect, since past events do not change the probability of certain events will happen in the future. For example, let me give you an example. Consider a series of 10 coin flips that all have landed with heads up. Okay, we flipped the coin 10 times, everyone came up heads. Now, under the gambler's fallacy, you might say that, I think it's more likely we're going to get tails next time, right? But the likelihood of a coin turning up heads or tails is always 50%, because each coin flip is an independent event, which means that any and all previous flips had no bearing on future. The fallacy comes in believing that with 10 heads already occurred, the 11th is now less likely. And in that way, I think sometimes we run our business that way. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Sayner, and he is going to share with you some more diamonds in his backyard, I'm sure. But I want to thank everybody for being on the call. And Ritchie, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Paul made a reference to diamonds in the data. And I think that one of the greatest things about RICS that I see is that when I look at and evaluate data from a RICS POS user, I typically see two things. Number one, they have a great system. They know their size, style, color, vendor information, pretty much down to a T, and all of the other ancillary reports that come with it. Their margins are usually pretty good. But two things that typically step out to me on new RICS users that I come in contact with are inventory balance, which seems like a nebulous term, but basically if we have stocks that are out of balance, we end up with lower sales. We either have too much or too little inventory by class and by store. And the other more important issue probably than that is slow inventory turnover. And inventory turnover, as Paul mentioned, is the key to cash flow. So Nico, if you've got the next report ready, it's right here. The key to that, if you want to know where the diamonds in the rough are, it's no more than a simple report that for most stores that use RICS is a 3 to 4 page report. Sometimes it's longer if you have a bigger store, but it's the sales analysis by class. And what I ask stores to do that are interested in having us take a look at this report, I request this report, which you can generate in seconds. I want it for a year's time. So for example, through November through the end, November 1st through the end of October of last year is a perfect time period. So we've got an idea of where the business is being done by category and the actual ending inventory on hand at active selling price or the current selling retail price. When I see that report with an analysis that we go through, I can pinpoint areas through a simple review that shows us, where we are missing opportunities, the upside potential, and where the downside risk is. And that's the key. And I'll give you an example. I've done 3 of these within the past month for RICS users. Everything, and they were all single stores. And what I found in there was idle cash tied up in inventory. And the smallest one I did was $85,000 that I found in extra cash sitting there. And the highest one I did was just under $1 million, a single store. $1 million in available cash sitting there. So it doesn't take long to generate this report, to have a look at it. It's all confidential, obviously. And then decisions can be made once you've got this very simple 1-page report. So it compares your store, what you're currently doing, to what other stores in our database show are possible. Then you can make a decision that of what you'd like to go from there. If our system is a good fit for you, great. If not, that's fine too, but at least you've got the information to know where you're going. So that's the objective. Nico?
So the good thing here is we were fortunate enough to have a couple of clients that Ritchie actually works with on a monthly basis to come in, and we can tell you until we're blue in the face how great we think the partnership is between RICS and Management One, but it's always better to hear it from the clients themselves. So we're fortunate enough to have Rick Ravel from Caravel Shoes. Rick, I wonder if you would just take a couple of minutes to, now that you've heard all of this information, just to give your perspective on how it is to work professionally with Ritchie.
Well, we brought Ritchie in. We had heard him speak at a National Shoe Retailers meeting, and had actually, the company he was working for had tried to do business with him and just couldn't get it all together, and then just put it aside. And then finally we were having issues, and so we brought Ritchie in, and he came down, looked at our stores, and the first thing out after he saw our stores, he said, well, where's your inventory? I said, what do you mean? He said, normally when people bring me in, it's in their garage, it's in a storage unit. He said, I'm not seeing that. And I said, that's not our problem. Our problem is cash flow. And it was a major problem. And so what we did is he got us organized and started giving us reports that we needed. It gave us an open to buy. And we had been working on open to buy, but it took 2 weeks for our merchandise manager to get that done. And so by the time we got it, everything had changed and it was not what we call live. And what it turned out with Ritchie looked at our inventory and says, you've got to get rid of this. As Paul said, there was a lot of cash, or Ritchie said cash in the walls. And having gone through the 80 debacles, we went from 13 units to 1, from 3 million to $256,000. We started with RICS actually there with 1 unit back in the 90s. After 1 year, we ended up doing 2 cash registers, and from there, the rest is history to us. And when Ritchie switched companies, we went with him. And what we found is that the data, RICS's live data, our other open to buy was not. Basically, you sent it in the first of the month and that was it. Now with the Management One, we literally, we meet on the first of the month, and then we do open to buy updates every Monday. And then we also do it on the 15th of the month. So we actually do 5 open to buy reports every month. And it gives us a plan, and that's what we look at. I'm known as a turn maven. Average NSRA report was around 275 to 3. We were at one time 4-time turn, and that we were very happy with that. And what does that mean? It means that your product is sitting on your shelves for 90 days, and you have to pay for it in 30 to 60. And I said, I'm not in the business to finance our vendors, even for 30 days. So that was one of the turn things that we did. We also found, Ritchie said, well, you're always seems to be, running light of inventory, you need to beef it up. Well, we beefed it up. And what we found was that the difference in increase in inventory and the difference in increase in sales do not correlate. So the idea that you've got to have inventory to sell is that you have to have it just in time. You have to have it at the right time. And I think that's the other important thing. And our philosophy is if shoe hadn't sold in 6 weeks in our store, it's swapped out or marked down. We don't wait till the end of the year. And we send out 30 reports to our vendors. And we say, you manage the bottom part, third of the report of the best sellers. The middle will take care of ourselves, and we will reorder the top. And with that, we have, consistently grown until this year. You cannot plan for what happened. I mean, we've been through the 80s, then the 90s, then the 2009 situation, and here we are now. And when you have, like, our women's business was 50% of our business and goes down to 26, 27% of our business in a month or 2 months, it's very difficult to plan. And we finally got it down over the last couple of months. We're now running corporately around 70% of LY, but our growth is in the athletic business, and that's really has fueled it. Is now from 30% to now almost 50% of our business. And with that, turnover is critical. And as we all know, trying to get athletic product right now is not the easiest in the world with some of the vendors that we carry. And so planning is critical, and especially planning for next year. That's going to be, to us, one of the most critical things that we have to look at. So those reports, those open to buy, I'm sort of the merchandise manager. That's what I do now. And I'm running those reports and looking at them, and we visit with the buyers and we go through those. And Ritchie will sit down. One of the great things about Management One is like a phone call away. And he is talking with us many times with our buyers during the month. And that's really one of the advantages. An outside party, look at the numbers, the data, and he has been in our stores and he sees pictures, really makes a huge impact on our business. So, between the RICS, which tells us where we are, and Management One, which tells us where we are and where we should be, it's a really, really good partnership for us.
Thank you so much, Rick. We also are fortunate to have Mallory Dabney from Heyday in Bozeman, Montana. Are you there, Mallory?
I am. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Well, I'm so excited to be here. And gosh, there's Ritchie and Management One and RICS are all integral to our success here in Bozeman. Ritchie has actually worked with 2 retail businesses, among many others in Bozeman that I've been deeply involved with, including Heyday. And one of the many things that I really value in our relationship in our monthly calls is that he not only knows our business and the growth that we've experienced over the past 12 years, but more importantly, he offers so much insight from a completely unbiased perspective. And I think that's super valuable. Our success is also his success, but he's not tied like can be to that one line that I fell in love with at market. And I just won't mark it down. So he's always constantly bringing that outside perspective. And I think it's really easy for us as owners and buyers to get really tied to the vendors and the product, which is super important, but they're not always slam dunks. And so that's that unbiased perspective is so helpful for me. And while we all know there's a level of finesse when it comes to buying and assortment planning, Ritchie, as Paul said earlier, is always reminding me as well that the data just doesn't lie, and it really does tell a story. And it offers us an action plan mid-month, every week, even at the beginning of each month, to know how we're going to tackle the month and the next few months forward. For instance, as Paul also mentioned, the conversations that we're having now are where do we want to be on January 1? And that allows us to really plan our markdown, our promotional schedule, and really just come up with an action plan that I think that piece can be really paralyzing if you don't have information to back it up and how to head into a really busy season. And as Rick said, a little unpredictable too, so that we have a plan to be nimble and react as needed to what sales are telling us. In addition to that, other business functions that I feel like the inventory does drive is promotions, as I mentioned, but staffing. We have a very hands-on approach here, and so we can look at the plan and know that how we're going to need to staff our receiving department and how we're going to need to staff the floor and our merchandising. So it does trickle down, but even throughout our entire organization. In addition to that, I thought it'd be helpful just to share, I actually purchased the business a few years ago, so there wasn't this time that I knew of that Management One and Ritchie didn't exist in our life. And so I just honestly, if I can be really transparent with the attendees on this call, I can't imagine not having that open to buy and not having my monthly conversation with Ritchie. It's so valuable. And one of the things we did do at the beginning of this year, which as we all know has been a little unprecedented, is we did, as Paul mentioned, split up some categories that were growing quite rapidly. And the volume was becoming to a point where we needed to dive even deeper. So there was 2 that we did that. And even during a global pandemic, those 2 categories are 10% up over year over year, and 17% up year over year. And which to me is huge, especially given this, that we've had store closures and we've been limiting capacity and whatnot. In addition to that, I realize that Bozeman is also we're in a little bit of a bubble here, but just because of some very tight inventory planning, markdowns, promotionals, we have also been able to be up 6% over last year, which is huge, just from especially going into the holiday season without knowing what we're going to be faced with. In addition to that, you guys talked about turn, and one of the things that Ritchie has always really hammered home with me is we have how to effectively manage that. And we tend to turn too quickly, and that's probably comes from a place of being a little more on the conservative side, but we have definitely left sales on the table, and he's quick and efficient to point that out and get us moving to buy more, get more in the store. And that's always resulted in increase sales, which has been super helpful. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that, during the closure and during shelter in place, Management One was, quite frankly, an amazing resource for all their retailers. The COVID webinars, how to be adaptable, how to negotiate your rent, how to manage vendor relationships and negotiating your open to buy, and even to the point of, cash flow and PPP. I mean, the resources were truly endless. And, that was a very isolating time and a little bit of panic. And just to have those resources available was so helpful. So that's all I have.
Oh, thank you for that, Mallory. We do appreciate the call out on the webinars as well. It was one of the things that Management One, right off the bat, I think in March was when our first coronavirus webinar came out, and it really was out of necessity from our clients. Everybody was in this uncertain window, so we really wanted to take a step back from planning. Stores are closed. What can we do to at least provide some information, at least a go-to resource? And a lot of retailers were very happy with that. And it's something that we realized in Management One, that we have an obligation to the retail community to provide education. And we are going to continue that in the months and years to come. So I wanted to turn it over now to the folks in our questions panel. This would be the time to please submit any questions that you have to our panelists, our retailers, to the folks at RICS. Please submit any questions that you have in the questions panel. While I'm waiting for that, I did want to touch on one thing that came up. And Paul, I'll probably have you speak to this. I think you're the most knowledgeable one on this subject. When we talk about planning after the pandemic, we often hear this fallacy that it's really impossible to plan based on what we know from the pandemic. But we've seen a lot of unifying principles, and a lot of the things that you've talked about even today really don't apply to the pandemic. And getting your business right-sized is something that is not really applicable to any of the pandemics.
Well, this is something that gets our CEO, Mark Weiss's blood pressure up. So we have to be careful talking about this too much with him. But Mark is correct. And when he gets quite excited about the fact that that is a canard, a fallacy, where you cannot plan during a pandemic. In fact, the only way you can exist is to wing it. And without any information at all. I mean, that's essentially what someone is saying. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of planning in itself. Planning is all about understanding the value of each month in each category and its weight. And even if you're doing less business, those weights generally stay the same. I mean, we're coming into December, so the weights of, if you are a men's apparel store, for example, probably 40% of the sales you're going to do in December will be in sweaters. 40% of your sweater business will be in December. Whether you're doing 100,000 or 10,000, those weights stay generally the same, whatever is going on, whether it is a crisis in the economy or a crisis based on a virus. Planning is something that is a constant. And we can still plan, I think, surprisingly in an accurate way, even though we may feel that chaos is just falling around us.
I couldn't agree more. I also wanted to give a little bit of credit to Rick as well at Carable Shoes. Mallory talked about adaptability, and Rick, you were one of the clients. You had to be ultra adaptable, even in this store makeup. I remember right when stores started to reopen, you set up separate booths. You sell footwear that requires clients to actually be in store trying on the shoes. And I thought that your pivot towards those individual booths was a genius maneuver.
Thank you. Yeah, our clientele tends to be skew older, and we do some medical work. And I had worked in clinics in the city hospital, and sort of took that off that way, and it's they're 5 by 5 by 5, 6 feet high, and we spray them every night. And we took out half our chairs, and the customers seem very, very, very comfortable. And our staff, the most important, our staff is. Yeah, we planned for this. We closed the 23rd of March and reopened. We could have stayed open, but we reopened May 1, and we were set up and were able to find all the thermometers and the gloves and the mask and the cleaner and the hand sanitizer. And then we started producing shields from 3D printers we had and sold them around the country. And then just for people who couldn't find anything at the time, and collected a lot of money for food banks doing that. So now we just keep going on. So, yeah, one of the things that we've learned is that Ritchie, we had to adjust our plan, and it sort of took us about, what would you say, Ritchie, a month, maybe 1 or 2, 1.5, 6 weeks to adjust the change so quickly to really get a true feel. I think we literally just had to let the plan float, and it finally got it where it really made sense to us. And that's one of the advantages to get it right. So when you drop, 30% overnight and in your biggest category, and how do you, and then trying to deal with that, and then the other category increasing dramatically, 15%, and then trying to get merchandise for that athletic category. Very interesting times, to say the least.
And it's one of the things that we like to hammer home with the Management One clients or anyone interested in Management One planning. It offers that agility, exactly to what you're saying, to spot those changes and react quicker than if you didn't have a plan in place. And we've noticed just the month of October, looking across our entire client profile, our clients are up overall about 3.86% over October 2019. Even in a pandemic year, which is just an amazing testimony, not only to Management One, but to our clients as well. Our clients reacted to the planning, and they reacted to a lot of the information that we were trying to provide up to the minute. And Mallory mentioned the webinar series that we put together. If you go to the chat function, I'm actually putting a link. We put all of those webinars up for free on our YouTube channel. So feel free at your leisure and check out the YouTube channel. You can see all 21 of those webinars as well. I do see one question coming in here. Since we have such a small grouping, we have a question from Gord Hobbins. Gord, I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind. I'm going to unmute your mic, and I will let you pose that question yourself to our panel here.
Hello. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm enjoying the meeting. Thank you for your time being here. My question was basically, as a long-time specialty retailer in the running industry, I have a very strong bias to feeling that we always have to have exceptional depth in our inventory. When I say depth, from the small size right up to the very large size, including the widths. And when you run the sales data report, or when Ritchie has his team take a look at their first report, what's the most common suggestion you would give to the old school, we stock way too much? What's your most common suggestion you would make to these guys or myself?
Well, thank you for the question. That's a great one, and it happens all the time. I would look at the entire SKU in this case, and I'm looking at the age of the inventory and when it's flowed in. I would also probably ask you to run a size analysis report, also to take a look at all those sizes and widths to see where the sales are really coming from. And it doesn't make much sense to me to tie up 50% of your stock in something generating 10% of the sales, just for that one person that might come in someplace down the road. I'm going to ask Rick Ravel if he's still on the phone. Maybe you can unmute him. Rick, would you? That would be my suggestion. Would you go along with that?
Oh, absolutely. When we do that, and we actually look at sales analysis by SKU. We look at you like with RICS, you put what you have in inventory, what you have sold, and then you get percentages. And you know, we go from AA to 6E in men's and AA to 4E in women's, and we go up to 15s and down to some 5s. But we find out the outliers, you know, we'll sit there and we may have 6Bs and we've only sold 1. Well, in a class, which would say women's running, well, that means we're over inventoried. And yet in 6.5, we may have only 2 in stock and have sold 8. Well, that means we probably need to beef up that area, but our money is tied up in that 6Bs that aren't selling. And it's interesting how that, you know, used to be 7 was your average size, and then with running shoes, they ran a little short, so you'd be 7.5. And now we tend to skew 8.5 to 10 is our bulk of our business. So those small sizes become less and less important. And we try, you know, sometimes we don't even buy, we will not buy every size in a new shoe. We'll buy.
Let me jump in here, Rick, because remember what Paul said. He said you can be understocked and overstocked at the same time. And that's exactly where that comes into play. We're understocked on the items that we need, and we're overstocked on things that aren't selling. So I help stores balance that out and make the decisions that way according to what he said. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah. And your options what do you do with that inventory where you're way over? You call your vendors and say, look, I need to do a swap out.
Absolutely. That's the first course of action.
That's your first course. And then your second course is you just mark them down. And you say, well, these are sizes we don't need. And if maybe somebody will buy one that weren't thinking about it, because that cash, you know, if you're running a 6-time turn and an 8.5B and you're running a 1-time turn and a 6D, that pretty well tells you, you know, where your inventory is tied up, and you need to get rid of it one way or another.
And I'm glad you made that priority distinction. A lot of people immediately jump to the markdown, but it's good that you can actually call the vendor.
Well, that's something you have to negotiate. Whenever we start with a new vendor, we negotiate those up front. When we say, you know, we said, we'll send you reports, but this is what we expect. And if you cannot live on that, we just can't do business together. And they have a choice. We have had some fashion vendors who, well, we just don't swap out or take anything back. And I said, well, we don't want you to take it back. We want to swap. And if something's selling 7 times at the top and something's not selling at all, let's see, that 6 pair becomes 42 pair for you in a season. What would you rather do? And they figure out it real quick that they'd rather take the 6 back and sell 42.
Okay, thank you very much for your help on that. I appreciate the answers and the contribution.
Thank you, Gord. Thank you for your time. So I wanted to be mindful, speaking of time, we are at the 60-minute mark here. And if you do have any further questions, I didn't see any in the panel, but if you have any further questions, feel free and email Paul, paul@management-1.com. I also wanted to put out there, Ritchie mentioned how easy it is to generate the sales analysis tool from RICS. And it's really just a quick 30-minute call, free inventory analysis with Ritchie, with Paul. Ritchie, maybe you could just take a minute or two to explain the process.
Yeah, sure. For those that have an interest in finding out how much idle cash might be available in their inventory, just send us the sales analysis report for a 1-year period. And you put the headers up there, but I want to see sales by class. I don't need vendor. I don't need style, size, color information. I just want to see where the sales, the margins, and the turnover are coming from the class and subclass information. And from that, really I actually like doing that. I like looking at that and finding areas where we could tell a story and find available cash. And it's been life changing. When I say that, I'm not making light of that. It's been life changing for some of the people that I've been able to point that out to, because the system, the POS system, will do anything, but it takes the information that you're presently gathering and allows you to find those diamonds in the roughs and put it into a plan if you choose to go that direction.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to thank you, Ritchie, and Paul, for your time in presenting this information. Definitely wanted to thank Rick and Mallory as well for taking time out of your day to give their point of view. And the largest thank you to our partners at RICS. I wanted to thank Tom and Jimmy as well. I'm sorry, Jimmy, we didn't get to throw any questions your way, but in the future, we will look to grow this partnership even more. And we look forward to our next event. We actually do have an event coming up with RICS again next week. We'll be sending out an invitation to that as well. And we will be sending all of you the recording to this today. So thank you all for your time today, folks, and we will speak again soon.